Have you ever found yourself struggling to trust your partner even if they've done nothing to abandon you? Or have you ever felt this deep fear of abandonment or not being enough in your relationships? What if I told you that these struggles are tied to what we call the daddy wound? We're going to talk all about the daddy wound and how to heal it. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Secret Formula of Femininity for women who want to live a more feminine, fun, and fabulous life. I'm Dr. Nicole Montero, your host on this weekly journey to unlocking your inner radiance, nurturing fulfilling relationships, and becoming the best version of yourself. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Nicole, your guide on this journey to tapping into your feminine essence and building healthy and fulfilling relationships. Today, we're going to talk all about the daddy wound, what it is, what causes it, but also, more importantly, what you can start doing to heal from it. And this is very personal and profound. This is something that touches so many women, which is why I thought it was important that we talk about it. So let me start with a story as usual. I worked with a coaching client. I'll call her Jessica. Early on, I observed that she had this pattern of attracting extremely unavailable men. And she kind of understood that. She could see it herself, but from the outside, looking in and hearing her story and what she was struggling with, this is one of the key things that stood out. That she was such a beautiful, accomplished, well rounded woman, but this was not reflected in the types of men that she chose. Now, she would usually attract and give her attention to men that may have looked good on the outside, but they were completely emotionally and otherwise unavailable. I'm talking about men who were maybe married or in a so-called committed relationship with someone else, or men who always had excuses about why they could only see her at certain times of the night, what we call the 2 a.m. booty call. Why men who just would find ways to make her feel like she was less than and that she had to work so hard for their love. And this was just a pattern, a cycle. And I explained to her that this is something that we call the repetition compulsion. This is where you continue to repeat the patterns that reflect your early hurts and wounds. And it's almost like you're attempting to correct it or to heal it by doing it over and over. Yes, it's misguided, but it's just an instinct that we have to heal some of our early childhood wounds. And for a lot of women, especially those accomplished women, that daddy wound can be so deep and profound. Sometimes the daddy wound is what pushes some women to be achievers and to go all out and be so motivated and ambitious. But the unhealed parts of it they come out in relationship choices, the kind of people that they end up being attracted to, and the patterns, the unhealthy patterns in their relationship. Now, when this was highlighted and pointed out to Jessica, and we worked on it, she really began to actively address her daddy wound. So many amazing things started to happen for her. She started to really embrace her self worth deeper than words, beyond just saying, hey, girl, you are enough. She really embraced her self worth. She started to set healthy boundaries with herself and with the people around her. And she started to reflect on what makes a healthy relationship, going beyond the external things that she was attracted to in certain people. And over time, this just snowballed. Even after we stopped working together, she would contact me and tell me, the path that she was on, the journey. And she actually is in a very healthy relationship now. So it looks very different than the way things looked when we first started working together. And the key part of that was her working on her daddy wound. So, what exactly is the daddy wound? We can call it the father wound. I know you've probably heard about it. Abandonment fears, anxious attachment. Like, there's so many ways that we may describe this, but essentially, it is the deep, lasting impact of a strained or absent relationship with your father. And unfortunately, this is more common than many of us acknowledge. And it doesn't mean that your father was completely not around. It could be a strained relationship due to tensions in the relationship between your parents, or personal problems that your father was going through, or addiction, of their own generational trauma that made them emotionally unavailable. Or it could be complete abandonment, not knowing your father, not having any contact with him. Even if your father died when you were young and it wasn't, you didn't have a chance to fully understand it or process it or talk about those feelings, all of that could result in the daddy wound. And what that looks like when it comes to relationship is, number one, difficulty trusting men. And if you think about a lot of the rhetoric, you hear me talk a lot about the gender wars. So much of the rhetoric has to do with, men ain't ish, so to speak. And it comes from this deep sense that you cannot trust men. And I know people want to talk about it in terms of this is in general how men are, but people who feel this deeply and who say this over and over, it comes from their personal experience of not having a trustworthy relationship with the first man in their life, which would be their father. It could come out as a need for constant validation. So when you're with someone, you're constantly fearing rejection, abandonment, that they are not going to be there for you, that you're not good enough. So you're seeking to be validated from just, how do I look? Am I good enough? Am I okay? How do you feel about me? You're not going to leave me, right? It's a never ending cycle that can be really, really exhausting. And that fear, sometimes that fear of abandonment is not even spoken, but it's an internal feeling. It can feel like being constantly triggered to where you are, even if you don't say it, you're thinking that the other shoe is about to drop, that this person is going to leave you. They're going to find someone better than you. They're going to somehow find your fatal flaw, that you're not this amazing a person that you look like on the outside. It's almost like a type of imposter syndrome within a relationship, though. And it could also play out as overcompensation that comes out as being hyper independent. So we've talked a lot about the hyper independent, I don't need a man woman. Like, and these types of extreme phrases come from hurts and wounds. So what better way to deal with the wound of having a strained, unhealthy, or absent relationship with your father than to say, well, I didn't need him anyway. And not only do I not need him, I don't need any man. I don't need anyone that resembles him. I am going to do it on my own. I am strong. I am self sufficient. I am independent. So, this is what you see sometimes with high achieving women who are very strong and pour everything into their achievements. And it looks amazing, right? Somebody will say, well, wow, you are so strong. You are so resilient. And that is part of the story. But the other part is, what is it like for that woman when she's not working, when she's not achieving, when she wants to be, uh, lean into her femininity and her soft side and her vulnerability? She often feels very hurt and disoriented and lost and desiring and yearning for a safe place to just be. And so, this is how the daddy wound impacts women way beyond just their childhood. It goes into adulthood. I've worked with people, older women in their 60s and 70s, and people will say, well, oh my God, I'm this old. I shouldn't be struggling with this. Throughout each stage in our womanhood, these hurts and these abandonments and these wounds can reemerge just in different ways, right? When we face different challenges at different periods in our life, the daddy wound, if it's not addressed, if we don't attempt to heal it and to come to terms with it, it will continue to come out. Now, if any of these struggles, whether it's hard for you to trust men, you're constantly looking for validation, you fear abandonment, you find yourself being hyper independent but exhausted from it, if you have experienced any of these, you are not alone. Don't worry. There's so many women who are right there with you, and it is common, as I said. However, just because this was the story of your past doesn't mean it has to define your future. You can have a healthy, loving relationship, even if your dad wasn't around, even if he wasn't present the way you needed him to be. That is the beauty of coming into adulthood and into womanhood. It's really finding out and realizing what you truly need and learning how you can heal. And it's not only self love and self healing, but it is healing through healthy relationships. I think we have all, anyone who has been in a healthy relationship will tell you how healing it is. I will tell you that my marriage has been one of the most healing things in my life, healing phenomena in my life. There are things you learn about yourself when you're in an emotionally intimate relationship with another person, when you decide, I'm going to commit to this. And there are ways that you cannot just run from yourself. You see yourself. We think about it seeing the other person, but you see yourself in all of your fullness. You see yourself in all of your fullness, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. Now, the daddy wound has a particular impact on your feminine energy and your femininity, because usually the way we deal with the daddy wound is to go into our masculine. We self protect. We are going to protect ourselves. We are going to achieve and show the world and give ourselves the validation that we feel we didn't get. But for women who really want to lean into their femininity, the daddy wound can make it hard to really embrace their softness and their vulnerability. That's because it makes sense, right? That's because they may feel the need to always be in control, or they may struggle with letting go and letting other people step up because they're just going on past experiences. It's hard for them to let their partner lead because either A, they haven't seen examples of healthy leadership from a man, they haven't seen it at all, or they have seen leadership that was misguided or that just felt dangerous, because if that father did not protect them emotionally, then it felt like the leadership was non existent. So the wound can create a fear of emotional intimacy. It doesn't necessarily create a fear of sexual intimacy. It can if there was sexual abuse, for example. But usually it's that emotional intimacy that it affects, because deep down, as the woman with the daddy wound, you are afraid of being hurt. And the pain is so early childhood pain, emotional pain is so visceral. That means you feel it, it's stored in your body. And when you're triggered and you feel it again and you remember it, it feels like it's piercing your heart, piercing your stomach, piercing you somewhere in your body. And so it is a type of pain that most people want to avoid. There aren't many people that say, hey, sign me up for that again. The problem is the defense mechanisms, the ways that we try to protect ourselves are usually not helpful. They're more destructive and they can lead to us having more pain. So remember, I told you about my coaching client, Jessica, this pattern of attracting and entertaining, because I always tell people it's not just who you attract, it's who are you entertaining. There may be different, a whole host of people that are attracted to me, but that doesn't mean I am going to entertain even 99% of them, right? Or 1% of them. So it's about who you entertain. But with Jessica, the pattern of entertaining these unavailable men was so painful. It caused so much pain. Heartbreak, it's reinforced her idea that you can't trust men, that nobody's going to be there for her, that she's not worthy. That is the deepest fear and pain. Like when we peel back the onion and we want to say like, what is the thing at the core that you are most afraid of? And for most women, it's the fear that they'll be found out, that they are not enough. Because if you think about it, when you've been abandoned or not cared for adequately by a parent, the child will most likely blame him or herself. In a child's mind, everything is about me. As a child, I'm very self-centered. So that means when bad things happen, I don't see it as, okay, that was that person's decision, or they weren't capable, or whatever the issue is with that parent. As the child, I will see it as because of me not being worthy or something that I did. So it can lead to a lot of guilt and shame. And so Jessica was running from this guilt and shame, but she was running, her defense mechanism made her run to more pain, where she felt guilty. She felt bad about herself for continuing to entertain and be with the same type of men that made her feel unworthy. When the sad part is they were unworthy, but they made her reinforce that feeling that she was unworthy. So when you start to really go into a deeper level of healing, you will begin to go back to your nature as a woman. Your true healthy nature as a woman is your balanced femininity, where you can allow yourself to trust your intuition, know who it's safe to be vulnerable with, who it's safe to connect with. You won't find yourself just, having a defense mechanism that has you attracting and being with unhealthy people. So that healing has to happen over time, but there's some key things that you can start doing immediately that will jumpstart the process. And the first thing is acknowledgement. So many of us suppress our pain. So many of us repress it, which is even deeper. Like we just take it totally outside of our awareness. And when that happens, it's not on the table, it's hidden. So we can't deal with it. When Jay-Z said, you can't heal what you don't reveal. So when we repress our feelings, we push them so far down that we can't even address when they're there. We don't even know when they're there. We can't understand how they're affecting our behaviors and how they're really having such an impact on our life. So the first thing is to acknowledge it. Yes, even the toughest, strongest, high achieving boss chick woman will need to acknowledge her daddy wound. If daddy wasn't there, if daddy hurt you, if daddy didn't step up, if daddy abandoned you, if daddy was on drugs, if daddy was a womanizer, if daddy had a bunch of side women and side families, if daddy didn't provide financially, if daddy didn't tell you you were beautiful, if daddy didn't do what you needed him to do, you need to acknowledge first as the little girl how painful that was, but also as the grown woman, how painful that continues to be for you. And one of my favorite things to have women do, one of my favorite activities for women, is to simply write a letter to the little girl you. Pick a time, pick a memory of yourself when you were a little girl. Pick a memory of you as a little girl where you are aware of feeling hurt, feeling missing your daddy, missing his presence. And write a letter to her, whatever age or stage that was. Write a letter to that little girl version of you and ask her how she was feeling. Ask her what she needed. Let her know it wasn't her fault. Let her know she's a beautiful, amazing woman now, and that she's always been beautiful and amazing, and that she deserved the things that she wasn't getting or that she didn't get. And let me tell you, this is such an emotional exercise. When I have women do this, you can just see the tears coming down. And I'm smiling because I know those tears are a bridge to a healthier version. So acknowledging the pain is so important. It doesn't matter how hyper independent, high achieving, high earning you are. You have to start by acknowledging the pain. The second part is to rewrite the story. So that's where a lot of us tend to get caught up. It's like we're stuck in the narrative of what was, and we feel like that's the end of the story. But if you've ever read a great novel, there's so many twists and turns, and ultimately in a good story, there's triumph. There's been a transformation where the person has been able to transform that pain into something more healthy, more useful for them. So, a lot of it is rewriting the story. You have to understand that daddy, who wasn't there, right? Your father's inadequacies were not your fault, right? They were about him and not you. And this is the one thing that I tell anybody who's experienced any kind of abuse, neglect, people not being there for them. You have to understand that the decisions that people make are about them. It's their shortcomings, it's their lack of having better ways to cope. Whatever the reason is, it's their decision. And it's not about you. There's nothing a child could do that is their fault that would make a parent abandon them or not be there for them. You are worthy of love and respect. You've always been, right? It doesn't matter what messages you received growing up. It doesn't matter if you were called names, if you were told it was your fault. I've talked to women who talked about being called ugly and bees and hoes and even the mother adding to the daddy wound saying, well, that's why your father left. It's because of you. And I know those memories and those messages can be very painful, but it's important to separate yourself from the messages you received about yourself from people growing up. You have to see that as their poor choices, their bad choices. And if you want to try to empathize or understand, that's great. But the first part is to just focus on you, rewriting the story of your self-worth. You are worthy. Whoever wasn't there, they missed out. They missed out on the opportunity to be a part of your triumph, right? So it's literally rewriting the script. We always say that we live our lives in a narrative. And sometimes we focus so much on needing to make somebody else the villain in our story. And while your daddy, who may have been absent, may very well feel like the villain, to really live out a better story as an adult, you have to replace all of the energy you're putting on the villain and focus on the current hero in that story, in your story. And guess who that hero is? It is you. It is you in all of the ways that you're healing, that you're leveling up, that you're becoming a better woman. I know the villain is, it draws us in, right? There's a part of the whole villain trope that is there, it's exciting, right? Even though it's bad excitement. So it's easy to focus on the villain. It's like a distraction. But the true healing comes when we focus on the hero. And you are the hero of the story that you're rewriting about yourself. Okay? And the third part, when you know, right? So it's acknowledgement, it's rewriting the story. And the next step, when you know you are really healing, is learning to trust again. Yes, absolutely. It's like if you were in a bad car accident and you got really injured and you have to go through physical therapy where you have to learn to walk again. We've heard many stories like this. And it's painful, right? People will tell you when you're in that physical therapy, it is painful, but it is an important step if you want to get back to the part yourself where you could walk, and if you want to get back to the healthy version of yourself. Well, trusting again, you can't say that you're healed if you are distrustful, right? You start small by trusting yourself. And that's that part of reconnecting with your feminine essence. It's that inner knowing, that inner intuition. I was just telling somebody that one of the gifts that I have and have like really honed and developed over time is the ability to know myself. Know thyself, as they say, so that every major decision that I have made has come from a place of deep knowing. And when I get to that deep knowing, I do not care what anybody else has to say, right? And then, so as you, in order to trust another person again, you have to really learn to trust yourself. You have to learn to trust your decisions, that you know what's best for you, that you have to trust that you are enough and that you are worthy, right? One of the ways you can do that is just keep your promises to yourself. Make a small promise to yourself each and every week that you're going to do something healthy. Now, one of my favorite things to tell women to do is make a promise that you're going to nourish yourself. There's a lot of us that don't eat. I talk to women who will tell me it can be 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they haven't eaten yet because they were so busy, or they were doing this, that, and the other, or they forgot, or they weren't hungry. That is a form of self abandonment. So it's interesting that the daddy wound is about being abandoned, but look at the ways as a grown woman that you self abandon, whether it's allowing people who are not worthy to take your energy, whether it's not having boundaries, whether it's not taking care of your body and not nourishing yourself on a very basic level. You want to be mindful of if you are self abandoning. So, the best way to learn to trust again is to start to trust yourself. Make a promise to yourself. Tell yourself, I am going to eat a healthy breakfast 5 days this week, and actually do it. I'm going to take a walk for 15 minutes each day and actually do it. I'm going to write in my journal and take some time to reflect on my feelings and actually do it. I am going to stop work. I'm not going to be working all times of night, or, just immersing myself and always working, working, working. Tell yourself that you're going to do that and actually do it. Over time, this is going to extend to trusting others, because as you learn to trust yourself and have healthy boundaries, you can trust that you're not going to let unworthy people into your space. See, usually when the biggest sign of a lack of self worth is allowing people to drain your energy and to be in your space who do not deserve to be there. We cannot keep talking about how bad the men are without looking at, why are we letting certain men into our space? Why are we giving our emotions, our minds, our money, our bodies to people who are not worthy? And once you start to really develop your sense of self worth and separate yourself from the negative messages that you got about yourself when you were younger, you will begin to repel those unhealthy people. It will be a point where your glow will be so beautiful and so magnificent that there's a podcast I watch, and they call those dusty men nug nug. Nug nug. It's like the man that you do not want to have in your life, right? You will begin to repel the nug nugs. They don't even want to come near that light. So you're going to be attracting a whole different type of person. And even if some of the people that aren't worth it for you come into your sphere, you are not going to entertain them because of how you feel about yourself. Now, let me give you a little warning about this part of the healing journey. Number one, people are going to say you're acting funny, you're acting new, who do you think you are? And just take it with a grain of salt, let it brush your shoulders off and keep moving, because you know what? They're right. You are changing. You are acting new. You are acting in your best interests. The other thing that might happen is you may go through a period of feeling lonely, because a lot of times when we're not feeling worthy, we fill our time and space with a bunch of, noise, which is like people, users, people that will suck your energy, people that will just ask, 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 and never give, takers. We will fill our space and our time and our energy with those kind of people. But once you start realizing that you don't want to do that anymore, you are potentially going to go through a period of loneliness. And that's when you have to keep sitting with yourself. And that's where you have to be okay with acknowledging the pain. But that's where you also start to replace those negative people and behaviors. So go work out, go explore a new hobby, rest, read a book, start that, execute on the plans that you have for yourself. Write out the qualities of a healthy man and a healthy relationship. There's so much that you could do to fill your time. You don't have to always be going out or going here, be invited with this group. Take the time to realize or to decide who you really want in your circle and be okay with the downtime and with the alone time. Now, as far as research about the effects of early childhood relationships, there's tons of research that really illustrates that our early relationships, they are what shape our adult relationships. People with unresolved parental wounds from childhood, they often develop insecure attachment styles. But the good thing is attachment styles are but the good news is attachment styles can be dynamic. They can change over time. So the healthier you get, the healthier your attachment style gets. And to really have a secure attachment, it's about learning to self validate, not always looking for validation outside of yourself. And to recognize when you're getting nervous or anxious about being abandoned, and to have some coping skills and strategies in order to deal with that. As you heal, you will notice that your feminine energy begins to flourish. And here's some tips to even supercharge it even more. One is to continue to practice self compassion. Give yourself the compassion that you needed as a little girl. Again, it's that letter, it's that hug, it's putting your hand on your heart. It's just sometimes a good cry, it's a hot bath, anything that you need. It's a self compassionate affirmation. Simply, you are enough. You're beautiful. You look in the mirror and you tell yourself that. You also have to surround yourself with supportive people and relationships. And that's part of that letting go of the dead weight. And sometimes you have to be in community with other women who are on the same path. That is part of what my inner circle, the Boundaries to Bliss inner circle, is about. It's not just the coaching and the master classes and all of that, the skills, communication skills, boundaries, all of that is there. But more importantly, it's a community of other women who understand why it's important to be on this path, right? So you want to have supportive relationships. And then you want to have those activities that make you feel vibrant and just happy and light and free. So anything, yoga, dancing, going out into nature, journaling, just enjoying moments, beautifying yourself. Go one day, just do your makeup and do your own photo shoot. Like anything that makes you feel alive in the moment and vibrant and beautiful. And you'll hear me mention beautiful a lot because so many women, because of this daddy wound, grew up feeling unbeautiful, unworthy, like they weren't good enough. If only I were this, daddy would have stayed. He wouldn't have abandoned. So you have to give yourself that sense that that you're good enough, that you are beautiful, you're worthy, and you are enough. So I do have a question. Somebody wrote and said, "How do I deal?" Ooh, this is really good. How do I deal with my father still being in my life, but not emotionally available? Okay, this is tough, but it's really common. Remember, the key thing is you can't control another person in their actions. And usually the unhealed little girl in us wants to tap dance almost to make daddy notice us and do better. You cannot do that. It doesn't matter the age. This is a healing, change, transformation journey that your father has to go through on his own. So you want to focus on setting boundaries while also having grace. So establish for yourself what you're willing to tolerate. How often do you want to talk to your dad? Do you even want to talk to him, right? That's the first step. And it's really driven by you. What do you want? If you want him in your life, you have to understand that it's not going to be perfect. If you don't want to have him in your life, you can let him know, hey, I need some time, I need some distance. The most important thing is, first of all, for you to be aware of what you want, and then for you to communicate that to him. And know that the healing journey is also his to take. So he may truly be sorry, but you can't fix it for him. He has to go and do his own work. It's not going to be perfect. And the most important way for you to protect yourself and your energy is through setting boundaries. I hope that helps. I think that's a really common experience. So I love the question. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Healing the daddy wound is not about blame or shame. It's not about going back and getting revenge and proving again to everybody that they never should have left. We all might sometimes have that urge, but that's not what it's really about. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of the past, knowing that it's not your battle to fight. Whatever somebody else didn't do, that is their issue to resolve, their battle to fight. The key for you is to lift that burden from your shoulders so that you can step into your feminine power and into a healthy relationship in the future. It's about leaving the past where it needs to be and really being in the present so that you can have a healthy, happy future. Again, if you want to learn more about self love, how to move on from past childhood trauma so that they don't ruin your relationship, your current relationship, and how to step into your feminine power, you want to get my book, The Boundaries to Bliss Blueprint for Women Who Are Finally Ready to Win at Love. And as I mentioned earlier, my inner circle is the Boundaries to Bliss Society. This is a community of women who are working on healthy boundaries, healthy feminine energy, and healthy relationships. You will learn so much through my recorded master classes, live group coaching, and so many other resources. The links to both of those are in the show notes. And also, the Damsel Me Please t shirt collection is out. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. And remember, stay feminine, stay soft, and stay beautifully you. I'm Dr. Nicole.